Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours, Hot for Teacher, subtitle, an Adam Coble joint, produced by Adam Coble, brought to you by you delicious people. Thanks for coming, everybody. We're gonna answer some questions. We're gonna talk about relationships. We're gonna do the Hot for Teacher thing. But what, you may ask, the hell is Hot for Teacher? You may be here expecting regular type office hours where I talk about role-playing games. Not today, my friends. Today, we're doing Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher is a write-in relationship advice show. It's a spinoff from the call-in tabletop RPG game mastering advice show, Office Hours. So every week for Hot for Teacher, I answer 3 questions from you, my lovely audience, submitted in advance to www.adam-cobble.com/hot-for-teacher. And the questions tend to be about love and sex and friendship and all kinds of relationship and related quandaries of human interaction, because being a human is difficult, and trying to be a human that interacts with other humans, that's even more difficult. It is a relationship advice show from your favorite tabletop game master, a non-monogamous queer man, just trying to get you to get your shit together. So, as with the previous couple episodes, I want to stress before we begin, if anything that we talk about here on Hot for Teacher feels confusing or weird or upsets you, I would like to invite you to discuss it. Whether you do so live in chat, in the comments, or on the Math Squad Discord server, which you can find by Googling it. I want to make sure that you know that this little period of time we have together is not the beginning and the end of the conversation. This is meant only to invite you to think about things a different way than perhaps you have been, and to invite you to have conversations with your friends and people that you trust and care about these topics. So you've done a good thing by bringing your question to me, but conversation and communication, just like in tabletop role-playing games, in relationships, is the most important thing, even if your relationship is only 45 minutes here with me and the rest of the audience once a week. So let's get into it. Let's begin with today's first episode. Comes to us from a familiar face, or familiar username at least. Tom asks, this past year I've come to realize that normal relationship dynamics don't really suit me so well. However, I'm still struggling with the whole jealousy thing when it comes to people I'd like to be romantically involved with, as 20 years of societal expectation and learned behavior is kind of hard to shake off. Yes, that's true, Tom. I was wondering, how do you manage feelings of jealousy in a relationship in a healthy way? Well, Tom, you adorable cinnamon roll, thank you so much for submitting your question. And I think that jealousy is a thing, to some degree or another, most people struggle with in their lives. I think jealousy can be a pretty common emotional response to like a bunch of stuff, not just my boyfriend smooching that cute guy over there. I think that jealousy can crop up for all kinds of reasons in relationships. And whether you're in a highly normative kind of escalator style monogamous relationship, or you're out here on the freaky fringes with the weirdos, jealousy is a thing that can come up. And when we talk about jealousy, what we're usually referring to is this feeling of sometimes surface level, sometimes deep, and varyingly powerful negative emotions that can express themselves as anger or frustration or anxiety or helplessness. And jealousy can also be accompanied by or prefaced with like physical reactions too. Maybe you feel shaky or lightheaded or nauseated. It's not fun to feel that way. It can be really rough stuff. And I find usually jealousy tends to center around people we are in relationships with, sharing intimacy. So like flirting, touching, sex stuff, emotional sharing, any other number of intimate things with other people. But I want to talk first about the difference between jealousy and envy, because I think that they are extremely salient differences here. Salient and significant. So envy is the feeling that somebody else has a thing that you want. Maybe Senpai has noticed someone else and not you. Maybe someone has a nicer phone, a nicer house, more free time, more Twitter followers, or whatever. Envy is about you have, and I want. And in relationships, envy can be a product of desire not being met, right? Envy focuses primarily on the thing being wanted and the feeling of want. Jealousy is the feeling that someone else is getting something that by all rights should be yours, something that belongs to you. Envy is, I wish I had more of my boyfriend's time and attention. Jealousy is, my boyfriend is spending too much time with someone else, time that belongs to me. It's not always so black and white, not always so clear cut, but I've found that a good first step is looking at the feelings you're having and trying to assess whether you're feeling envious or jealous. Because I think that envy can be a lot easier to handle, because I think it's more readily repaired alone. You can kind of fix envy on your own. It's less about deep-seated underlying insecurity stuff and more about just like wishing for a thing you don't have. You can short-circuit envy by focusing on and being grateful for the stuff that you do have, right? The time you do get to spend with people, the nice things you own and are thankful for, the experiences you get to share with your loved ones, and really, we can work to get things that we're envious about. Envy is a lot more straightforward. It's just, I want it. Give me the thing you have, right? It's just plain old desire sharpened by that bullshit thing that we do that's comparison. Jealousy, right? This real, like, deep, jealous bullshit. Feelings of entitlement, feelings of desperation, this clinginess, the grasping onto the things that we own or deserve. If you're listening to this and not watching, I'm rolling my eyes so hard it's giving me a headache. All of that stuff is so much messier and so much harder to escape, but it can be worked through if we are willing to do that work. Here is a thing that I have found to be helpful when looking at our feelings of jealousy. Jealousy almost always starts with fear. Jealousy is an expression of fear for a present or future loss. Sometimes jealousy in a relationship expresses itself as a comparison fallacy. The idea that the person that we care about cares about someone else, and if they do, they're going to end up liking them better, and we're going to lose out. The fear of losing the intimacy that we have with someone. Sometimes jealousy expresses itself in a petty, controlling way, right? We feel like we own certain types of intimacy and worrying that that intimacy is being shared when it shouldn't be, right? Now, this part can be exacerbated if the people we're in relationships with are violating some agreed upon decision around what intimacy is and isn't exclusive. Sometimes jealousy comes from seeing someone flirt when flirting was one of those exclusive things. I don't feel like that's necessarily jealousy. I think that might just be anger or frustration or sadness or disappointment, right? Like if you say to someone, hey, part of our relationship that we have agreed upon is that we don't smooch other people. And they're like, yes, I agree. Smooching is just for us. And then you see them smooching someone else and you feel bad. I don't know if that's just jealousy. I think that that's probably you're feeling mad and upset and angry for a good reason because they've done a bad thing, right? They've betrayed your trust. Jealousy is about, I think, in a lot of ways, the fear of that happening. I think a lot of jealousy comes from the expectation or the realization of intimacy outside a relationship when those boundaries were never established. A lot of people in monogamous relationships, for example, build these assumptions around boundaries that no one ever actually established. Nobody ever talked about what is or isn't okay. No one ever established, hey, we don't have sex with anyone else while we're in this relationship because it's a given. They're relying on social cues and social understanding that these are the things that are and are not okay without ever having negotiated those things. And fuck that shit. Don't do that. Even if you're in a monogamous relationship, talk about what monogamy means for you. But I think above and beyond all of this, relationships or otherwise, when it really comes down to it, jealousy speaks to a problem stemming from self-worth. When I talk about non-monogamy with people who don't have experience with it, particularly people who are used to being in monogamous relationships, people almost always respond by asking about jealousy. I think that other non-monogamous folks probably have this experience too. I get the impression that this is a shared experience for people who don't do the monogamy thing. People don't ask you about the actual practical stuff, right? You don't often get the first question as like, ooh, non-monogamy, that's interesting. What do you do when it's one person's birthday and another person is graduating from university and you have to be in two places at once? What do you do? Right? People almost always start with, well, don't you feel jealous? Or, oh, I'm just a jealous person. I could never let my girlfriend do that. Which, okay, I get, because jealousy is really about the self, not actually about anyone else or even any other relationships. It's all about your feelings about yourself, right? When you, for example, know that someone you're close to is hanging out with or smooching or doing sex stuff with or building any kind of intimacy with someone cute and cool and fun, you might feel jealous about that. You might feel like, ugh, why isn't this person doing these things with me? Or this person is my boyfriend. Why are they doing the intimacy stuff with someone else? But really, though, what you're feeling is fear. Now, obviously, there's a lot of varying opinion about jealousy. People who feel jealousy like to try to justify it in various ways, right? For example, it's highly romanticized in media. Like, if you care about someone, you get jealous, especially if you're a man. You get all angry and possessive, and maybe you throw something, and you, like, make an object of the person, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry. But the core sentiment of, your ass belongs to me, doesn't get rescinded, right? There is this idea that is reinforced in media that in monogamous culture, showing that you are jealous is a romantic act, but fuck that. Fuck it. It's the worst. That's controlling and it's bullshit. It's not cool. Yes, it's not good. Just let's discard that. It's not a way to show that you care about someone. All that is showing that you care about yourself. But here's the thing, right? Sometimes when human beings feel things like fear or shame, we romanticize or eroticize them. We make them feel good or okay or sexy in an effort to make ourselves feel less bad about the ways we feel bad. It's a coping mechanism. I think that consensually, there is actually a lot of room in relationships for things like, sexy jealousy play, in big quotes, but real jealousy isn't about that. It's about not feeling confident in yourself, right? Now, hear me out. Jealousy and jealous feelings are about you, not about your close people or their behavior. The people that are close to you might do things that trigger your feelings of jealousy, but the source is a fear that you're not enough, not good enough, not sexy enough, not fun or lovable or successful enough to get the things that you think that you are owed. So when people that you care about are out doing intimate stuff with other folks, you're maybe going to feel afraid they're going to want to stop doing those things with you. And your brain responds with weird entitlement feelings, and socialization relies on the idea that a relationship is in some way about being allowed to own a person and their actions, which is horseshit. So what do we do to confront jealousy? Because it's an emotional response, we can't just rationally make it go away, right? All of the advice from me saying, when you feel jealous, try to look at it rationally, that's fine, but it's not going to make it go away just because you can think about it logically. What we can do is try to get better at understanding and dealing with it. Now, this whole thing is sort of hard for me because I have not found that my ways of experiencing jealousy are the same as other people's. A lot of this stuff comes from conversations with folks about their feelings and how they've worked through them. Now, it's not to say that I don't experience negative feelings, that I don't occasionally have a lack of self-worth, that lack of self-worth doesn't get triggered by the behaviors of other people, but it's just for me, instead of feeling like graspy and like angry when I feel jealous, I tend to feel really dissociated. I feel like numb and distant from the thing. So I'm going to try to use like a broader interpretation of like dealing with jealousy here, rather than like specific like feeling stuff, because mine are not necessarily the same as like say yours. Anyway, whatever the way your jealousy expresses itself, I think that what you can do is address it and take responsibility for it, right? Let's imagine that you have someone close to you who's out doing a thing with someone, and you're sitting at home and you're feeling frustrated and angry and jealous, and I don't know, you're trying to play a video game, but you just keep dying and thinking about them smooching someone else, and you can't focus, and it's making you feel like you're kind of coming apart at the seams. Now, you can be passive aggressive if you want and like text them a bunch and then get mad when they don't text you back. And then you wait up because you can't sleep until they get home. And then even though you have class in the morning, and then you resent them for it, and you're angry because you didn't sleep, and then you fail your test. And then you're angry about that because it's their fault. You could do all that and be a total dirtbag if you want to. But here's a better plan. Suck it up. Feel bad. Just like feel bad and be okay with feeling bad, right? Sit with your feelings and like Paul Atreides that shit. Let your feelings pass through you. And like talk to someone else who is not this person that you trust and say, hey, I'm having a tough time tonight. Can I whine to you about it? Like, I would really just love an opportunity to like talk to someone about this and then vent a little, get some reassurance, hash it out in real talk, and whatever helps you get through those bad feelings that isn't about pressurizing or externalizing your feelings, right? Don't let someone else be responsible for this. Don't give away your feelings of jealousy. Find time to talk to the person that you're feeling this way about, but do so in a non-reactive way. Don't sit up until 3 a.m. in the dark like a creep waiting for them to get home. Go to bed. Try to sleep. Relax if you can, and ask them later if there's time to talk about your feelings. Emphasis here on your feelings. Never make your jealousy someone else's problem. You cannot solve jealousy by controlling someone else's behavior because jealousy is not about them, right? If it were about them, you could take them out of the equation, insert someone else doing the same behavior, and you'd be fine, right? But it's not like that. It's you. You're feeling these things. One of the worst things I think you can do is expect someone to change their behavior because you feel jealous. Telling them to stop seeing someone, stop being friends with someone, stop going somewhere. It's never going to work. And it just breeds resentment. But talking with them, admitting that you feel jealous, working together to expand and explore that feeling safely without putting it on them to solve is going to make it something you can experience together. You can be vulnerable without weaponizing that vulnerability. Our feelings are our own responsibility. And while other folks might do stuff that trigger those feelings, and we can let them know about those things, jealousy is ultimately about how you feel about yourself. It'll never go away entirely unless you're able to recognize that no matter who the people you care about are close to, no matter how cute or fun or cool they are, those people are close to you because you are fun and cool and cute and you have lots to offer. And if you're able to recognize your own value, and Jesus Christ, I know that can be hard, jealousy becomes less of an issue. Now, there are tons and tons of like poly advice columns about dealing with jealousy, but I find for the most part, they tend to turn into conversations about avoidance, right? A lot of non-monogamy strategies tend to be about engineering your relationship so that nobody has to feel jealous. Hierarchical polyamory, is in a lot of ways about orchestrating structural stuff that protects everybody from feeling jealous. I say, fuck it. Feel it, right? You seize that horrible jealous feeling by the throat, stare it in its filthy yellow lizard eyes and say, fuck you, jealousy. You are just fear trying to blame someone else for my insecurity, and I won't stand for it, you hideous monster. When I've been close to people who have been dealing with jealousy, I've always tried to help by reinforcing things that I like about them. Things I value and I appreciate about them when they are feeling jealous, right? So you, my dear Tom, can ask for support. You can say things like, when you spend lots of time with so-and-so, I sometimes experience weird and crappy feelings. It would be really nice if, like, you know, on date night, you could give me like a little bit of extra attention or love, right? I would be really happy if you could find some extra space for me in in the moments of your day when I'm feeling anxious about stuff. I'm not asking you to change what you're doing. I'm not asking you not to go on dates. I'm not asking you to change anything about your life. I just would like maybe some reinforcement, just like a little bit of like reminding. And that's going to help, because it's one thing to be like, yeah, I fucking rule. But it's another thing to be like, hey, Tom, you rule. Don't feel bad about feeling bad. Don't expect that just by shedding monogamy as a practice, suddenly your brain will become enlightened and never feel jealousy again. Everything in life takes work and practice and support from people who love you. And you got to start by being the person who loves you more than anybody else does. It's hard to be jealous when your relationship with yourself is so fucking good that everybody else ought to be jealous. Or envious, I guess. It depends. Our second question comes from Sexy Undergrad, which I gotta say I read the first time as Sexy Underpants, which, whatever. I have a much larger sex drive than my boyfriend, and I am left pretty unsatisfied in the bedroom. That's code for sex. It's a sex thing. Normally, this wouldn't be the end of the world, but he frequently flirts with a lot of other women, and it makes me generally feel shitty, and I'm not good enough. Most other areas of our relationship are pretty good, though I still feel like I should break up with him. Should I? Or should I try harder to figure out how to cope with the situation better? So, the part of me that has been in various types of non-monogamous relationships for a very long time has some advice. But then I'll also address this from a more monogamy-centric perspective too, because I think that's I assume that's your situation. So, first of all, I want to say that I empathize. I empathize with both you, Sexy, and your boyfriend in this situation vis-a-vis the sex drive thing. There are tons of reasons, psychological, emotional, physical, why people's sex drives just don't match up. How much we want to have sex at all, let alone how much we want to have sex with each other, varies wildly from person to person. Just because we're in a relationship where normalized, regular sexual contact is potentially expected to occur doesn't mean that our bodies or our brains want it to at the same rate and or frequency. There is a lot of assumption built into this question and the kind of structures that reinforce the relationship model that assume that sex is reinforcing, that sex has to happen in a relationship. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But sometimes we can find that we aren't as into someone we're really into doing stuff with. And sometimes we can find we want more sex with someone who isn't as into doing stuff with us. And this can basically happen at any time and for any reason, but that doesn't make it feel any better, right? It can be one of these weird tragedies of biology when you find yourself mismatched in that way, especially if it used to be less disparate. We equate so much emotional intimacy with sex that sex becomes less viable, and then we feel all emotionally fucked up about it too. So here's the thing. It's okay to feel frustrated and sad about this. Especially when it's causing friction in your relationship. The bad kind of friction, not the kind like you want. So if you're in a relationship where exclusive sexual contact is a part of that situation, you might feel stuck or frustrated. If you're not in a situation where exclusive sexual contact is part of your relationship, the answer on paper is relatively simple. Go find someone who wants to do more sex stuff with you and sex at them and your boyfriend, but not like necessarily at the same time. But maybe at the same time? The point here is that sex, like anything else, isn't necessarily the purview of a single individual. It's not a thing that we can get exclusively by some external magic from only one person. There are loads of people in the world who would be cool and fun to do a sex with. So find one of those, negotiate that with them, talk to your boyfriend about it, make sure everyone feels safe and everything is consensual, and bang, you're good to go. Only it sounds like that's not where you're at. It sounds like you and your boyfriend are sexually exclusive and you're feeling underfulfilled, and maybe it feels like his fault and you're feeling more sensitive because he's flirting with other people. So maybe you feel like it's not that he doesn't want to have sex at all, it's that he doesn't want to have sex with you. And that is rough. That can be a major hit to your confidence or self-worth. That can make all that flirting seem so much worse. So if you're in this situation and the only acceptable person you can have sexy times with is saying no thank you to sexy times, you're out of luck, right? Only there is always someone else you can do sex stuff with. I want to believe that you have a sexual, healthy relationship with yourself. And that sexual relationship is something you value and enjoy. And I know it's not the same, but it's important. And maybe just take some time to make sure that relationship is doing okay. Your being enough has nothing to do with your boyfriend. It has nothing to do with your boyfriend's sex drive. Your being enough, like I was saying to Tom, is about you and how you feel about yourself, which I know can be hard when you're feeling like someone else is doing you wrong or not doing you at all. What I guess I'm getting at here is there's an issue that has less to do with your boyfriend than you think. It's that you have a need you're not feeling is being fulfilled. Whether it's sex or anything else, I think that's pretty normal. We spend a lot of time in life chasing after fulfillment. So what can you do if you're in a monogamous relationship? You cannot go outside your relationship to become sexually fulfilled. Sex with yourself is not enough when you add the sex you're having with your boyfriend to the situation. I guess you're just going to have to talk to your boyfriend about it. I know. Sounds awful, but that's how it goes. You have to say, hey, friendo, I want to do more sex things. And since we have agreed we're in an exclusive sexual relationship, I cannot fix this on my own. Part of agreeing to be sexually exclusive is, I think, the agreement that you are tied together. That's a different agreement. You are tied together in terms of your outcomes here. That what my sexual fulfillment is something you are taking partial responsibility for, and vice versa. We have agreed to work together on these things. So remind yourselves of that. Okay, so here's the thing. And this is something that bugs the hell out of me about relationships that focus on monogamy. It's not up to him to force himself to want to do more sex stuff. It's not up to him to change what he wants or change what he is comfortable with for you. You can express a need, and then he can do with that information whatever he wants. Hopefully, the two of you can have a conversation about this that doesn't feel coercive and gross. Hopefully, you can express your needs without making them about him failing you in some way. And hopefully, he can express his needs without you feeling bad about wanting something he doesn't. The two of you are having problems, but because it's monogamy, it is a shared problem. You're both responsible for it. Do you know why he has a lower sex drive than you? Is this a thing that has always been true? Has something changed? You got to get into that together. And ultimately, you're going to have to come to a compromise. Monogamy loves a compromise. Meaning neither of you will ultimately get what you want. Get ready to eat some pho. You're probably going to end up getting more sex than you have now, but less sex than you want. And he's probably going to end up doing more sex stuff than he is now, but maybe he's going to end up having more sex than he actually wants to. What you're doing is sacrificing your 100% personal gratification for the sake of the relationship itself, which as an entity in some ways has to be more important than your personal needs in this case. Because if it wasn't, you would change the parameters of the relationship. And what I'm suggesting here is that you both remain open to that idea. If you say, I want more sex, and he says, I don't want more sex, you both have to be willing to look at other options. Maybe there's a less monogamous way to solve this problem. That's a whole other thing, though. Navigating metamorphosis from a strictly monogamous relationship into a non-monogamous one. But ultimately, you have to be real about this with yourself first. Are you ultimately comfortable, in the end, with sacrificing some percentage of your needs for the sake of the relationship? And is he? You say there's a lot of good shit there, and honestly, nothing is ever perfect, so you got to choose which battles to fight and which to give up on. That's just part of the sacrifice of monogamy, of exclusivity. And then you need to be real with him about it. Tell him what you're feeling, how it's fucking you up, and how the sex imbalance stuff is making you feel worse than you might otherwise about the flirting thing. You can, again, going back to what I said to Tom, you can express how the flirting and how the lack of sex makes you feel about yourself, but it's ultimately your responsibility to deal with your feelings. And then you have to work together to solve it for the sake of this third entity for the relationship, or come to an understanding that using the current model, it can't be solved, and figure out what shape your relationship takes from there. Maybe the other areas of your relationship are the only relationship you need to have. Maybe all that other good intimacy you have is enough. Maybe you can just go and have sexual relationships with other people and stay in this relationship and do all the good stuff. When it comes down to it, you're responsible for getting your own needs met. And while open and honest communication about those needs should happen with your boyfriend, it might be that you're just not going to get as much as you want from him. And that's okay for both of you. It just means that changing other things so that the relationship is healthy and consensual is the new plan. I'm going to suggest there's a book that I read, and I know a bunch of other people have read it and have said great things about it, called, I think it's called Come As You Are. I'm going to look it up. Hold on. Was that the name of the book? Something like that? Yeah. So it's called Come As You Are. It's a book about sex. Check it out. It could be very helpful to you in terms of figuring out how your own sex drive works and how your boyfriend's sex drive. Like, both of you read it together, talk about it, use it as an opportunity to discuss the things that you are reading. Fucking sex book club this shit. All right? Try that. It's a good book. Check it out. Now, before I close out on this question, I want to address something that bugged me about it that has kind of nothing to do with the question itself. I want to address the idea of coping with the situation. Right? In your question, you say, should I try harder to figure out how to cope with the situation? Which is to say, how do I figure out feeling bad and just dealing with it because this relationship is somehow worth feeling bad about? Sucking it up. Coping. Getting over it. Fuck that. If you feel bad, feel bad. If you are hurting, speak up. If you are bummed and dissatisfied and feeling shitty, make it known. Don't try to just be okay with something that's not okay. No relationship is worth suffering for. None. You are more important than keeping a thing going that isn't making you happy. Breakups can be a very empowering experience. Nervous and shy queer noob says, and also adorable, they're super cute. I really want to plug into my local LGBTQ community so I can make friends and maybe cuddle buddies, but I'm finding it rather difficult. I am not a fan of bars, and so much of queer culture seems bar-centric. Also, I have serious issues with not feeling queer enough because of my gender and orientation. Do you have any advice for breaking through that fear and finding cuties that don't mind my dislike of bars / clubs and noobishness? It would be nice to have some offline queer friends. Now, I am just the worst person to ask about this because I, too, hate bars and clubs and public places where humans are. I loathe going out and meeting strangers and, like, trying to have things in common with people. Blech. I can't stand the feeling of not knowing a person, but pretending like I want to get to know them. Ew. I love meeting people at conventions because they're like, hey, I like Swansong. And I'm like, oh shit, me too. And we have that in common at least. And we can talk about like RPGs or whatever. It's the idea that I could inherently have anything in common with someone outside, like, I don't know, we're both not straight. So, yay, we're both a little bit marginalized. Great. Let's find out what other things we have in common. I don't know. I feel mostly like you do, noob, in that I have a hard time in those sorts of environments and I can feel super uncomfortable, even when the space is designed to be inviting. I'm going to suggest that you go back to episode 1 and listen to my advice to the question about making new relationships and then just do that stuff, but like more gay. Find activities, do them with other queer folks, and use that as a launch pad for relationships, like deeper relationships. And I think it's a salient point to look at why, just like as an aside, look at why queer culture tends to center around bars and clubs, especially if you're a gay man. Now, I have no historical connection to this stuff, right? I did not come of age in the like mid 80s as a gay man. But I'm aware that this culture exists. Gay bars existed as a way for men to be themselves in a place in many ways hidden from the outside threat of a very hostile straight world. It was putting a flag in the ground, a big old rainbow flag in the ground, and saying, this bar belongs to us. And I think, in a way, it was about reclaiming some of the idea that being gay was seedy or somehow relegated to shadowy alleys. Now, for us as young queer people well, you're young queer people. I'm getting there. But for us, a lot of that history has faded, but the heritage of that struggle is still there, right? We have to remember and acknowledge the work that came before. These safe spaces, these gay bars, the danger of being openly gay or even closeted and gay was... It was different than it is now. So I think that queer culture has a positive attachment to these places where they and those who came before them were able to be themselves. For us, who have more freedom and less like attachment to dark places and loud music and drinking with other LGBT folks, we feel a need to go elsewhere. But thankfully, that's possible, right? And I think that there are likely to be a non-zero amount of queer activity groups you could join. And I hope that you live somewhere that you'll have some options. Maybe your school or a school near you has an LGBT club or a social organization. Maybe something as simple as a LGBT social or book club or queer gaming club. Honestly, I think a lot of these things exist now where they didn't before, and you can pretty much just put gay at the front of anything and find people who are doing those things. Gay Ultimate Frisbee. Gay Hannibal Fanfic Society. Gay Fight Club. Okay, regular Fight Club is Gay Fight Club. Point being that there are more options than there used to be. It used to be the gay bar was the only choice. And honestly, if you're really into the idea and you can't find anything yourself, hi, hello, welcome to the position that so many organizers of events, sex parties, marches, parades, etc. have been in over the ages. If you want it, you have to make it yourself. Dear Adam, I would like to play a tabletop role-playing game about intellectual property lawyers who are also immortal demon vampires. What game should I play? Dear Nerd, that game does not exist. Write it yourself. Dear Adam, I want to meet other queer nerds who like Babylon 5, but there are no meetup groups near me. You may just have to get your lazy little gay ass in gear and make one. Now I know it's a lot of work, and it's scary, and it's intimidating, but think about how nice it'll be to meet people who have things in common with you. And they're out there, just like you, wishing that someone would give them something to do that isn't dancing shirtless on a table or trying to make new friends by shouting over DJ Tiesto. Now, I don't know you very well, or at all, really, but I want to say this. Only you get to decide if you are queer enough. We don't have gay... I was going to say we don't have gay cops, but there are... Gay cops exist, but their job isn't to police gayness. You know what I mean? Nobody can tell you... I'm sorry, you're not gay enough for this activity. I don't care what kind of relationships you're in. I don't care what your gender or sexual identity looks like. I mean, I do care. I care deeply about you and about your relationship. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But if you're not straight and you feel like a queer person, you deserve a place in a community that will accept you for that. I think we all have better things to do than either feel bad about not being queer enough or trying to police each other's queerness. Okay? So get out there. Find the space that you want. Or begin the ancient ritual for conjuring that space yourself. I believe in you. Don't do it someone else's way. Do it your way. Even if it might be harder. You can do it. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been episode number 3 of Office Hours, Hot for Teacher, a write-in relationship advice show from your favorite game master. If you want to get involved, go to www.adam-koble.com. Click that Hot for Teacher link, fill out the form, and I would love to answer your question on the air. Big ups to everybody who was brave enough to ask questions. The show would not be here if it weren't for you. And that's it. That'll do her for episode number 3. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. I will see you next time. Later.